Okay. Hi guys, Maggie here. Today I have the privilege of talking with Dr. William Schaffner, who I hope I'm saying his name right. He is from Vanderbilt University Medical Center, which is where I went to school, although I didn't go to a medical school, I just went to nursing school. So, or not just, I would never say that. And I happened to find, while I was cleaning out my garage the other day, my badge, from way back when, being a nursing student. So I don't know, it's fun. So, and shout out to all my fellow Vandy grads, class of whatever, 2015, I think. Yeah, it's been almost 5 years, and it's really cool to see like what everyone's doing. And yeah. So anyhow, Dr. Schaffner, he's an expert. He's an expert in infectious disease, public health, and health policy. And I got in contact with him via email because my mom suggested it, because she was like, he would probably talk to you guys for your channel and your project. Like, maybe you should email him. And he responded. So hopefully he's going to jump on the call soon. And I'm just going to review some of my notes. But yeah, like I did some reading about him and his research. And I mean, it sounds like he knows a lot more stuff. He knows a lot of stuff, obviously, clearly. But anyhow, he's an expert in infectious disease, public health, and health policy. And I think he's been in practice, according to my Googling, for 54 years, but he might have to clarify that. But that's a long time. And I think he's probably going to have some really useful information for us as far as, the topics I kind of want to cover with him today are like, what do you guys need to know now as a public in order, because our states are opening up in basically a wide variety of formats. And yeah, everybody's opening up. We got to know what to do. And so anyhow, I want to know like what advice he's giving his loved ones and what advice he's taking, because if he's the expert in these things, I want to know what he's doing. I mean, it's cool if what am I trying to say? It's cool if we like listen to people talk on the news about like what to do and what not to do. But to me, it's like better if we hear something about what's someone actually doing who knows this stuff. I want to also ask him about vaccine development process. It's my understanding that like vaccines take a long time, to make sure they're safe and effective. And we, as a medical community, like we will never recommend something that's not, not studied well enough. I mean, as a clinician, I never would recommend something to my patients that I don't feel has enough research to support it. And I hope that other clinicians feel the same way and that they choose to practice that way too, of course. But anyhow, while I'm waiting for him to come on, I guess I'll just talk to you guys about more of the stuff I'm going to talk to him about, hopefully. What are your thoughts on, here he is. Okay. All right, we'll get to it. Let's see. He's connecting. We're also going to talk about contact tracing, maybe some herd immunity. Oh, hi, Dr. Schaffner.
Hi, Maggie.
How are you?
Good.
Good. So yeah, I was just giving like a little, I hopped on here and I was just giving a little brief like preview of kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. Are you okay with this being posted on YouTube? Is my first question. Sure. Okay. And do you want your video on or just your audio?
Oh, let's do the whole deal. Why not?
Great. Awesome. Great. Yeah, because this is real talk with real professionals. I was just telling. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So frame. Am I in the picture? Okay, I can't.
You're not in the picture. It's not on.
As long as you can see it.
I can't see it. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I have to the little button. Wait a minute.
There's some. There you are. Hi. It's nice to meet you virtually. Yeah. So, anyways, I I wanted to talk to you about a lot of topics, and hopefully we can cover them pretty quickly, so that people can get up-to-date information from you, who's an expert in this stuff.
Sure.
So I guess my first question really is like, what advice are you giving like your own loved ones, and like what advice are you taking as far as social distancing, and like what precautions are you taking yourself right now? As I know Tennessee's opening back up because my family lives there, and I worry about them. So.
Well, Maggie, we're being very careful. We're staying at home a lot. We are religious in wearing our masks when we're outside.
Mm-hmm.
We do an awful lot of hand hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
My wife goes once a week to the supermarket. I go once a week to the supermarket. And whenever we bring things back, she disinfects them. She swipes them down. So she's being very meticulous.
Right.
We have a little gray hair, so we're in that age group where we have to be a little bit more careful.
Right.
And so we're not out there stressing the system.
Mm-hmm.
We go out to walk, but we keep our distance, wear our masks, and we're generally being really quite careful.
Good. That's great. Yeah. So I guess like, I feel like there's so much conflicting information out there about like, our behavior with this, and how kind of like, is that overkill? Not to use a bad word, but like, I mean, what do you think? I mean, like, should we all be like, how should we sanitize our groceries, for example? Like, what do you guys do to do that?
Well, what my wife does is take some cotton gloves, and she gets a little alcohol solution, moistens that, and she runs her damp hands over the outside of most of the boxes and cartons and stuff like that that we bring into the house. I watched her carefully the other day. She actually wipes off the apples and the bananas too, which I didn't know. So she's being very, very careful.
Wow, that's awesome. That's cool. I think it depends on the person and like what people want to do. But like I said, I just wanted to know what you're doing. And then more digging into like the more scientific like questions. Where do you think we are as a scientific community in terms of the vaccine development process?
Well, that's something I'm watching very carefully, because I'm really interested in vaccines.
Me too.
I think it's fair to, let's put it into perspective first.
Mm-hmm.
Around the world, I have heard estimates that there are about 100 groups of scientists in different countries, all working to create a COVID vaccine.
Yes.
So we may have an abundance of success. We may get several vaccines. Here in the United States government and various private vaccine manufacturers and scientists are working together. I would say we're at the end of the beginning. We've created vaccine candidates in the laboratory. They've gone into animals, and they have been assessed in some animal species and are now starting to get put into human beings. And in the early volunteers, remember.
Volunteers. And they're fully consented, and like they're aware of the risks and benefits, like IRB approval, whatnot.
They are fully informed.
Great.
I can speak to that, not that I've been a volunteer in these studies, but I've been a volunteer in other vaccine studies.
Cool.
So I know that people are fully informed, and there are some already very early data to suggest that at least some of these vaccines do indeed don't give you anything more than a sore arm, just people are vaccinated, but they produce in the body the antibodies that can be measured that we hope represent protection against COVID-19. So good start. I like to say we're at the end of the beginning.
I like that.
We now have to go into many, many, many more people. Give it a year, year and a half, and we'll get there. But we're all working very hard
to
get to that goal.
Okay, that's great. The other question, I guess, regarding vaccines, I've got a couple, but like, I mean, like to me, I had heard some stuff floating out there in the literature about the potential for the MMR vaccine or the BCG vaccine against tuberculosis to potentially provide some protection. What's the latest and greatest on that, if you know?
Well, the two vaccines that have been thought of in that context
Yeah.
most
Mm-hmm.
are the anti-tuberculosis vaccine called BCG and the old oral polio vaccine.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know about that.
And the concept is that these vaccines provide protection against those specific bugs, but in doing so, create a broadened enhancement of the immune system so that if you should encounter COVID or other viruses, your immune system is already primed and ready to fight them off.
Okay.
Nice idea. There are some data, obviously, to suggest that that might work, but it hasn't been tested. But I know that at least the BCG vaccine, that kind of test is underway in its very early stages in Germany, I believe.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll look into this. I'll look into it and find it like on Google Scholar later. But my other question then, I think like because we already have studied the MMR vaccine like so extensively, is that totally out like as a potential protection in your opinion?
I don't have a strong opinion about that because until you mentioned it, I hadn't heard that the MMR vaccine was being thought of in the same way. But of course, virtually everyone in the United States has, unless you're older and experienced measles, but everybody else has been vaccinated essentially, or should be.
They should be, in my opinion.
Mine too. And so maybe it'll work in a way that theoretically the polio vaccine or the BCG vaccine might work.
Right. So the BCG vaccine has been really well studied though. So it's like, should we all be going and I mean, we know it's safe and effective against tuberculosis. So like, would it make sense for us to just go out and get a tuberculosis vaccine, or would that be totally like out there and crazy and too expensive for our world?
Well, I don't think things are crazy because, we're thinking about all possible things.
Okay.
But it's not something I would do just kind of on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, we don't use that vaccine hardly ever here in the United States. And the average doctor and nurse doesn't even know how to apply it. It's not an injectable vaccine.
Oh,
you have to scar it on the arm. So everybody would have to learn how to administer it. So I wouldn't go there.
Okay. What about for healthcare providers though? Because that's the question I have. Like, I'm not seeing patients right now in my pediatric practice because of COVID, and we're trying to do like telehealth and things like that to provide, really like adequate protections for our patients and their families. But for people who are inpatient and stuff like that, and maybe they have inadequate PPE, should they consider getting a TB vaccine? Or if they're working with vulnerable populations? Like, I guess that's kind of my question.
Yeah, Maggie, I'm not going there. I don't use things widely that don't have a good science base. And certainly I don't think we ought to be using vaccines without a very solid science base.
Cool. That's great. I agree with that. It's just a sentiment I've heard around, and then let's see, what else did I want to talk to you about? Oh, contact tracing. What are your thoughts about the value of contact tracing and how we can do this in an ethical and efficient way? Because there's been a lot of debate about that topic. It's a hot topic.
Well, you mentioned ethics, so let's deal with that first.
Yeah. Yep.
Since the very first public health department was established hundreds of years ago, people have done contact tracing for tuberculosis, for sexually transmitted diseases, shigellosis, salmonellosis. I mean, that's something that health departments do.
Totally.
And if we think about this, they have been remarkably solid in their maintaining the confidentiality of that information. It's one of the things that we don't talk about very much in recognizing what health departments all over this country and indeed around the world have been able to do. When I was a young person and records were kept on paper, I worked in the health department on behalf of the CDC when I was with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the person because he sat across the room from me, who was responsible for all the investigations of sexually transmitted infections.
Okay.
Sensitive data,
Right.
kept
They are.
confidential. He periodically destroyed those. I'll tell you what he did. This was back in the old days when they were paper records. I watched him. Better than that, he personally, the physician, took them down into the basement and put them into the furnace and burned them. He
I love
wouldn't
it.
he wouldn't trust anyone else to do that. He did that himself. That's how much he respected the confidentiality of those records. And you can tell it made a great impression on a young person such as myself. I remember it to this day, and that respect for confidentiality makes contact tracing ethical and important.
Great. Great. What about like there's talk in other, I guess, like I agree with you. Like I personally agree with you, and I love public health. But I guess what about, what are your thoughts on like some countries are doing contact tracing via like technology? Think about that. That's the controversy I'm hearing from friends, family that aren't in the medical profession or nursing or whatever. So that's my question, I think, too. I love that you address that, though, and I love that anecdote. So, yeah, I'm happy to hear what you have to say.
So what I don't have is an anecdote about using an app.
Oh no! I meant your anecdote about the furnace.
I'm just teasing. But I have heard about this, and I have to tell you, I'm very intrigued.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I'm also cautious because I understand the concerns. All of a sudden, somebody somewhere whom I don't know could track all of my movements. That will make a lot of people nervous. And so I guess I have an open mind. I'm curious, and I also have some caution about it at this stage. I need to know more.
That's awesome. Is there anything else I'm trying to just be respectful of your time. Let's see what other questions I have. Herd immunity. What kind of is going to, in your opinion, like what are we looking at? I heard you on another interview saying that like we need a certain level of herd immunity in order to actually have protection. And do you think that's going to come in, like, based on what you know, a form of a vaccine, or do you think it's going to come from like everybody just getting sick like you would back in the day, or like before we had varicella vaccine? What did you do? You went and you got chickenpox, and then you were protected. What do you think?
So for all your viewers, what herd immunity means is when a certain, usually fairly large proportion of the population gets infected, the germ, in this case the COVID virus, can't find anybody who's susceptible, and its contagiousness is curtailed. It just can't get around as much. Now, different viruses are more contagious than others, and this is a pretty contagious virus. So the estimates are that you would have to have a very high level of population immunity in order to really curtail the spread of this virus in a substantial way. How high? Well, the guesstimates I've heard range from 60 to 80+%. That's
Right.
very high.
It is.
Now, there are some data already from near San Francisco and also from New York about what proportion of people have already been infected. You'll be surprised at how low it is. In and around San Francisco, about a month or 6 weeks ago, it was down only around 5%.
Right.
In New York City, a hot spot, it was no higher than 20%, which means 80% of the population could still get this infection. So I think herd immunity is not something that we want to depend upon to protect us. But if we get an effective vaccine, and if we can deliver that vaccine and have it accepted by a very large proportion of the population, then COVID virus's contagiousness will really go down.
Okay, great. And What also that just brought up another thought as far as like um, because of those low percentages, I think that people are like, oh, we're not concerned about COVID, or like it only affects certain population groups. But we're seeing data coming out in the literature that's like pediatrics patients are affected. It's not just, you know, quote unquote old people that are getting sick, and like their lives are valuable too. I mean, everyone's life is valuable. So just because it's a small percentage to me, like doesn't mean it should be discounted, because it seems like we don't know enough about SARS-CoV-2.
Well, we're absolutely together, Maggie.
Yeah.
Your patients are important.
Yeah, they are.
Those children are very, very important. And we don't know yet how this virus completely affects children. Are they carriers of the virus, disseminators, even though the vast majority of them don't get sick, but some do? And then, of course, as you and I know, we have just discovered this multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children that fortunately is quite uncommon, is frightening when it occurs. It's really quite an illness. The vast majority of the children recover, some have died, but it's also something we don't know very much about yet.
Right. With that, yeah, I guess I have a question for you more as like as a clinician, like how would I distinguish if I were to see a clinical presentation, like how would I maybe distinguish that from Kawasaki? Like, are you aware of that, anything on that?
Well, that's certainly one of the important distinguishing features, and as a non-pediatrician, you're not going to ask me that question.
Okay, I'll ask a pediatrician. That's a great point about this whole project, honestly, because I mean, we just are getting started, like I told you in my email, but we're trying to go like directly to the experts who know more than we do, because we have to admit, I think we have to admit what we don't know before we try to provide answers to everyone. That's just me, but I don't know. Socrates said it, you know.
Well, be assured, right over my shoulder, I have a pediatric infectious disease textbook, and if I were asked to judge that, I would immediately get that out and read up about Kawasaki syndrome before I had to make that kind of judgment.
Cool. Well, I'll do some reading tonight. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that you think the public, like as a public health expert, that people should know right now?
Well, I think COVID-19 is going to be with us for a while. That's a sobering thought. So as we open up, we have to go, Maggie, to a new normal. We can't go back to the way things were. I know most people would like to do that, but I think social distancing, masks, good hand hygiene, being careful if you're older or if you have an underlying illness such as diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, being cautious about crowds, getting together in large groups, concerts, athletic events, religious services, all should be done with real caution, because this virus is going to be with us for a while, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that too. And I guess like the other thing I'm afraid of is like the mental health fallout. I mean, and we'll probably have someone on to talk about that at some point soon. But I do think, I don't know, from a population health perspective, in America particularly, like I've noticed in my own neighborhood, more people are out walking, they're exercising, their social connections are increased actually. And so I wonder if there's some sort of protective factor actually, like for like overall, like looking like population health in America specifically, but I don't know if someone's studying that.
I certainly think getting out carefully can have a very good effect on just your mindset, because there's no doubt, Maggie, some people have cabin fever. Older people get very lonely and get inner-directed and get very depressed and solemn and sad. And having interactions, I think, lightens us all up and is good for all of us. People like people.
Yes, we do. And there's scientific data. I mean, I have to look up the studies, but like, I think there's some scientific data that shows like the nations with the largest or longest lifespans, like they have, the reason like have such longevity is because of their social connections. And to me, it's amazing that, I mean, I never thought I would be so grateful for social media, but like, I think it's, I mean, I live alone personally, so like, it's hard to, deal with, but I've found connections through the internet, and it's cool. So like with you. So I think, yeah, okay. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. So I will go ahead and let you go, but I really super appreciate you interviewing with me today. And it will be up on the channel later today. I'll send you, I'll email you the link. Okay. All right.
Thanks,
bye.
Maggie. Bye.
Bye.